With the release of Thor Love and Thunder, I thought it was time to rewatch and re-rank all 29 of Marvel's movies. Starting off in last place, and that's Eternals. I think Eternals would have worked better as a TV show, and this is so we're able to spend a bit more time with each of the characters, and we're able to have a bit more character development with, as even though we are following the group, it mainly feels like we're just focusing more on Cersei's character, as that's more or less the only character that gets the full development throughout the movie. There's a couple of others. Also, the finale didn't work at all for me, and that's due to a number of different reasons. Number one is the fact that not all the Eternals were even there for the final fight, and Sprite teaming up with Icarus as well, as Sprite literally stabs one of her friends in the back, and at the end of the movie gets rewarded with her wishes that she wanted. And that's not a satisfying conclusion to leave the movie on, so that's why it's in last place. In 28th is For the Dark World. And it's in this position because I feel like it's one of the most, or the most forgettable MCU movie. And due to the fact that it has a reality stone and dealing with the ether, I don't think it should be this forgettable. Malekith also doesn't make for a good villain in the movie, so overall it's just a mediocre movie. In 27th place is Iron Man 2. And one of the main issues I have is that there's not a lot of action in this movie at all. There's really three main action sequences. We have the one with Whiplash at the racing scene, Tony Stark and Rhodey, and then we have our conclusion at the end and the fight there. So overall it does lack a bit of action, and also the relationship between Rhodey and Tony Stark changes for the worse, I say, from the first one to the second one. As in the first movie, you can see that Rhodey was still trying to tone down what Tony Stark was doing, but you can see their friendship in it more. I feel like in this one it felt more like Rhodey was just like babysitting and telling him what to do, and it wasn't really a friendship as much. However, it does have a nice introduction for Black Widow into the MCU. In 26th spot is Captain Marvel. And in this movie they are trying something different in the terms of how they were telling the story. Captain Marvel and us learning about her backstory and learning about how she became Captain Marvel at the same time, processing and learning all the information together. But I don't think how they done it made it work that well, and also the final battle doesn't really feel that consequential or if there's any threat to Captain Marvel due to her being so powerful. The fights that she has are very predictable, as she's able to destroy ships and people by herself with ease, and it doesn't make for a good fight. However, I did like the introduction of the Skrulls, and the de-aging of Samuel Jackson looked really good as well. In 25th, we have Thor. And what I like about this movie is the world of Asgard, as it was the first time in phase 1 when we were actually not on Earth and we went up to a different world. And I also like the backstories they gave to Loki and all the context around Thor, Loki and Odin. And I also wished more of the movie took place in Asgard compared to Earth, as I don't find it as good and as interesting when Thor comes down to Earth and trying to get his hammer back to go back to Asgard. In 24th spot is Black Widow, and this movie came out about 4 or 5 years too late, as the peak to do Black Widow would have been around 2015-2016 time. However, what I did like was the family dynamic that the movie was going for, and also the background information they gave about Natasha and seeing how she became the Black Widow and why she is the way she is now. Also, the action scenes are very good as well. However, due to the movie coming out about 4 or 5 years too late in the timeline and knowing everything that we already know about Natasha, it doesn't really feel like a necessary watch or that interesting, as we already know what happened to Natasha previously. Also, when they announced that the Taskmaster was going to be the villain, I was very excited due to the fact I was seeing the character in a couple of games that came out, so I was very excited to see this character in the movies. However, the character was nothing but a sidekick, and it really didn't have a lot of action scenes as well. In 23rd is Iron Man 3. And what I like about this movie is that it deals with Tony Stark post-Avengers and the struggles that he's had since the Avengers and what happened in New York. And also the Mandarin twist doesn't bother me as much as I know it bothers other people. However, when it comes to the villain Killian, we've seen that sort of trope before, where the person that loved the role model, loved the superhero, he gets shunned and he ends up trying to kill our hero in the end. We've seen that a lots of times in other superhero movies before, and we've seen it done better as well. And in 22nd is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And what I like about this movie, everything that made the first one good in terms of humour, in terms of the soundtrack, this movie had it as well. And also just following the group more, learning a bit more about each of our individual Guardians of the Galaxies as well. The whole plot of the Sovereign coming after the Guardians of the Galaxy can all be avoided as it's all their own doing. They're the ones in the wrong as they're the ones that stole from them. So that doesn't work for me as much. And also with Ego, they tried to have him and Chris Pratt have like a playful relationship together. However, what he's doing is quite dark and his plans are quite dark as well. So it doesn't really fit or match together as well. And also Yondu has a great arc and a great redemption story really with Peter Krill. And in 21st place is The Incredible Hulk. And I feel like this one's a bit of the odd one out of all the MCU movies. And this is due to the tone of the movie, as it's not as light-hearted and not as jokey as the other MCU movies that has come after. And also the fact that we have a different Hulk compared to the one that we have now. We had Edward Norton compared to having Mark Ruffalo at the moment. And even though it's not one of the best MCU movies, I do feel like it gets a little bit more unnecessary hate because of that. And I feel like the action scenes are really good in this movie. And also Abomination, I like the villain in it. And I like the showdown that they have at the end. 20th place is Avengers Age of Ultron. And what's great about this movie, just like the first movie, we have all our Avengers together again. And they all work well together. And we also get the introduction of Wanda. And we also get the introduction of Vision as well. For the most part, Ultron as the villain works. However, due to his personality being so much like Tony Stark, it feels out of place for his character and draws you out of the movie a bit. And in 19th place is Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings. And I know I'm not as hot on this movie as others, as I know a lot of people have this in their top 15 and top 10. And what I thought worked about it, as we had a different fight style, I thought the fighting scenes and the choreography of the fights were all really good. And I thought the Mandarin is a really good villain and one of the better villains that we have in the MCU. And they gave him a backstory where you can understand why he's doing what he's doing and where he's coming from and what his motivations are for doing that. However, some of the jokes didn't work for me as I felt like it was forced jokes, especially when Trevor's character came back into it. I felt like he didn't fit the movie and all the jokes that he was doing felt forced and that they were just trying to shove some more jokes into the movie. And also I felt like the final fight was too CGI heavy and it didn't need to be. So that's why it's in 19th place. And in 18th place is Ant-Man and the Wasp. And what I like about this one is it's a good follow-up to the first Ant-Man as they introduced the Wasp into it. And the movie wasn't trying to have some overarching story to tell over the whole of Marvel phases. And compared to the other movies that we were getting at the time, this was quite refreshing in that sense, as the villain was a smaller scale villain in terms of the effect that it would have. However, my one complaint about this movie really is the villain, as I don't think the villain worked at all, as throughout the movie the villain was going after them, trying to kill them or trying to harm them, and in the end they end up helping the villain, and I feel that didn't work at all, because in the end we didn't really have a villain as we just had someone that we were helping out. So that the fact that happened, it didn't work for me at all and it pushed it down my list a bit. So that's why it's in 18th. In 17th is Thor Love and Thunder. And what I liked about this movie was the chemistry and between Thor, Valkyrie and Jane Foster. As I thought them as a trio, when they were together, worked really well, with Korg in it as well. And I thought Gore as the villain worked really well, and I really enjoyed him, and he was the best thing every time he was on the screen. However, he wasn't on the screen nearly as much as I wanted him to be, as he was only really on it for 3 different occasions, more at the start, and then when they were in New Asgard, and then at the end. And I feel like they could have developed his character a bit more, given us a bit more information about him. And also, I feel like there's quite a sudden shift in the tone at certain sections of the movie, and it doesn't all fully work for me. And in 16th place is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And what I really liked about it was that we had Sam Raimi directing the movie, and with Sam Raimi directing it, we had a totally different vibe and tone to the movie. As compared to the other MCU movies, this one was a lot darker and had a lot more horror elements in the movie as well. And all the sorcery and wizard stuff they were doing, I thought worked. I wish they'd done a bit more of that, like in the first Doctor Strange movie. However, what we got was good. However, I didn't think the America character worked that much, as we didn't really get a backstory or much development of her character. She's more used as a device, as someone, than an actual character. And I also like the villain as well. Wanda as the villain, I didn't mind it, and I thought it worked. However, given her redeeming factor at the end, didn't work for me. I thought that they should have left her out to be the villain and not have her have a redeeming factor in the end. And lastly, the multiverse of in general, I wish we got to see a bit more of different multiverse, not just the main one that we was in. In 15th position is Spider-Man Far From Home. And what I really liked about this movie is Mysterio as the villain. And I thought he was a really good villain. And the scenes that he has as well, especially the fight scene that him and Spider-Man have around the middle of the movie with all the illusions, I thought that worked really well. And I did also like the factor of Spider-Man travelling throughout Europe as well. Even though I feel like the MCU should just do a Spider-Man based in New York, a proper Spider-Man movie, I did like the fact they were all globetrotting around Europe as well. However, with saying I liked Mysterio character, I didn't like the motivations they gave him for doing that, as they already had that sort of arc in Iron Man 2, with someone resenting Tony Stark and coming out to be a villain in the end, and I feel like they should have had him had a different motivation. And also, the scenes with the glasses, I feel like it's a bit of a stretch to believe that Tony Stark would leave those glasses for Peter Parker. However, once you get with it, I just liked the movie and I thought it was quite fun and rewatchable and enjoyable. And in 14th is the first Doctor Strange. And what I like about this movie is it gave us something very different in the MCU at the time. As this one's more magical, it has more magical elements in it. And what they were able to do with all the sorcery and magic, I thought worked really well, especially during the fight scenes. And the involvement of the stones as well, and how they were able to use the stones, especially in the last fight, was very creative as well. However, at times I feel like this movie can feel a bit generic though, and not really any different to the other origin stories that we have in the MCU so far. And that's why it is in this position. And in 13th spot is Ant-Man. And this is a nice light-hearted movie. And what I especially like about this is the fact that how they're able to be creative and what they're able to do with Scott Lang as he's able to shrink down and size up, how they're able to incorporate that and have different fight scenes and different sort of scenarios, especially like at the end when they were able to use the toy set as weapon and also in other scenes as well. And I feel like this is a nice heist movie. And also with the villain, I thought it worked well. It's a bit samey in terms of the villain having the same superpowers as the hero, but as in general in this movie, I thought it worked from what he was planning to do and his intentions throughout the movie as well. And in 12th place is the movie that started up the MCU in Iron Man. And this is where the whole MCU kicked off, and the idea starting with Tony Stark, and I thought this movie is great. Especially the early scenes in the cave, Tony Stark having the idea, making the suit, having all the tension and if he's going to get caught in the whole situation, to coming out of the cave and being the Iron Man and changing his ways from selling weapons before to now try to change that and have a different image around him, to the villain. I thought Ironmonger as a villain was good as well. Having him wanting to have the suit, trying to recreate it but not knowing how to, and which also shows the brilliance and the intelligence of Tony Stark throughout it, giving us that iconic line of being able to build the suit with all the scraps, and even to the ending, revealing his identity as Iron Man, and then to the post-credit scene. So overall, I feel like this is just a great movie and a great introduction into the MCU and Iron Man as a character. In 11th place is Captain America, the First Avenger. And what I really like about this movie is the qualities of Steve Rogers before he takes the serum. As before, he's so helpful. He always wants to stick up for the little guys. He's always trying to be the hero in terms of doing what he can for his country and not putting himself first. And then we move on to Steve getting the serum, and from then I think it works well. There's a little bit of a lull where we montage a bit of what happens in between, and I thought that stagnated a bit. However, from Steve Rogers getting the serum to some of the missions as well, I thought that was really good. Then we get a really nice emotional ending to end off the movie. And in 10th place is Spider-Man Homecoming. And I said this before, I feel like this is the most rewatchable Spider-Man movie. And I love it as it gives us a Spider-Man origin in a sense, but it doesn't tell the same story that we've seen in the Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. And Tom Holland playing Spider-Man has more of a high school vibe towards him, which is believable throughout the movie. And also the villain in Vulture, I thought the Vulture worked really well in this, as he's not a villain that's trying to end humanity, trying to like conquer a planet or a world. He's just trying to provide for his family from the scraps of what happened in the Avengers in 2012, and would do anything possible to provide for his family as well. In 9th place is Black Panther, and I really like this movie. I thought everything works really well apart from The one major issue in the end is the CGI in the final fight. But apart from that, I think everything else works really well. Killmonger is one of the best villains that we have in the MCU. And you can understand everything that he's feeling, everything that he's trying to achieve with Wakanda. The ways he goes about it aren't right. However, you can understand the goals that he's trying to achieve throughout the movie. And also getting to see a bit more of Wakanda. As it's a new location, we get to, not too much, but a little bit, explore a bit of Wakanda and a bit about what makes Wakanda so unique. We see the vibranium and everything about the vibranium, and also we get to see a bit of the rituals and the afterlife as well, what I think all work really well, leading to a massive and really good movie. In 8th place is Spider-Man No Way Home. What they were able to do with this movie and what it means in general for the superhero genre and comic books genre in general, just really great. The amount they were able to achieve by having all the different Spider-Men in it, all these different villains, and having it work so well and not seem too congested and too clunky, and I thought that was really great. There's so many characters, you wouldn't think that Tom Holland would be at the centre of the movie, but he is, and it works so well, giving him some emotional scenes to deal with as well. And also, the villains, especially Willem Dafoe, was really great in this movie as well, as they were. However, some of the scenes with Doctor Strange didn't work as well for me, and the motivation for why Doctor Strange allowed Spider-Man to cause what happened and what happened with the multiverse to happen doesn't work as well for me. But overall, I thought this was a great Spider-Man movie and leaves Spider-Man off in a nice direction to take him in future movies. In 7th place is Thor Ragnarok, and what I love about this is that the fact that they changed the tone of the Thor franchise. As in the first two Thors, it was very serious and very Shakespearean. However, they changed it and made it very colourful, very vibrant and very funny, and a lot of jokes in it. And sometimes the jokes can be too much, as they do take away from some of the serious elements that are happening in the movie. However, I feel like most of the jokes land and are all quite funny as well. Also, the team up of Hulk and Thor worked really well throughout the movie, and also Hela as the villain, as I thought she was a really good villain, and also through her getting to see more of the past with Odin as well, and how Odin was before Thor and Loki came around, leading to a great conclusion and a nice final battle leading off into Infinity War. In 6th place is the Avengers, and this is the first massive team up movie of the MCU, and I thought it worked well. I feel like some parts are a bit slower at the start whilst the team are still getting together. However, it is still enjoyable as we get to see the team interact and mix together, and that's really great. Have their arguments, have their differences as all their egos clash together. However, once we get into the latter half of the movie, that's where it really shows off how great it is, with having all the heroes in New York fighting together, having them. And with having all the teams together, it shows different sort of fight scenarios that you can have when you have all them big groups together. When you have all our heroes together. We get a first on-screen appearance of Thanos as well. And in 5th place is the Winter Soldier. And for me, as much, it doesn't really feel like an MCU movie. It just feels like a really good action movie. With Steve Rogers and Natasha going off, finding out about Hydra and discovering all of Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. And also having the Winter Soldier again. Having Steve having to come against his friend Bucky while he's trying to defeat him, however not hurt him or kill him too much, while we have Bucky going all out for Steve Rogers. So that makes for a good final act as well and final ending. And overall, the direction that the Russo brothers took the Winter Soldier is really great, and that's why it's in my top 5. In 4th spot is Guardians of the Galaxy, and what James Gunn was able to do with this movie, have characters that were really not well known at the time and make them likable, have it been really funny, and have a great surrounding and tone around the movie, whilst having some heartfelt moments in it. And what makes this movie great is having all these characters that don't fit together, having them all together to complete one mission, and having them trying to get along in those situations. And I thought it worked really well, leading to a great conclusion where you can feel emotional about a tree dying in Groot. In 3rd place is Civil War. And what I really like about this movie, as they place real world situations for what the Avengers are doing. Yes, the Avengers are saving people and like destroying the bad guys. However, whilst they're destroying this city, normal people get hurt, and there's a way they need to stop that from happening. So having Tony and Steve on the opposite side with Zemo as the villain, using that to manipulate them to fight each other in the end works really well, as Zemo's not really like a big villain that you will remember. However, the impact that he has and the effect that what he's caused on the Avengers has like implications for the rest of the MCU, leading on into Infinity War as well. And also the movie was able to introduce new characters seamlessly, so they're able to get their own movies like Spider-Man and Black Panther. They were able to have enough of them here to make you even more excited for their own movies coming up as well. And they had some iconic scenes in it, especially the airport scene and the scene at the end with Captain America and Iron Man fighting. In second place is Endgame. 11 years of the MCU wrapped up into one movie to conclude it all. And the last 2 hours are the best 2 hours in the MCU. The only bit that's holding this back from the first spot is there's parts of it that I don't really like with the Fat Thor. I didn't really feel that character worked. However, everything else is really great. From going back in time with the time traveling, having Tony have that talk with his dad that he always wanted and always regretted. And also revisiting other iconic scenes within the MCU, like the elevator scene in The Winter Soldier, and also having scenes like Captain America vs Captain America. And then we get into the final part when the snap happened, and from then we get all the Avengers coming together, and that's the way they're able to manage that work really great, having all these superheroes, finally getting to hear the Avengers assemble, having Tony Stark being the one to defeat Thanos in the end. I thought that all came together and worked really well, and having a really emotional ending as well. Leaving off with Steve Rogers going back and having that dance with Peggy. However, in first place is Avengers Infinity War, and I feel like this is the perfect Marvel movie. There's action from the beginning to the end, with them coming in, showing Thanos vs Hulk, showing the strength of Thanos with how he's able to destroy Hulk in that situation, having him showing off his power and what he's able to do to the Asgardian people and to Thor's ship, leading off into having the situation with all our heroes scattered in different locations, having to come against Thanos, Thanos beating them in different situations as well. Making Thanos the leader of this movie really worked, as we were able to get an understanding of why he was doing what he was doing. Not just having him as a villain just doing it just to have power, but there was an actual reason behind why he wanted to do this, to the conclusion at the end where we have our Avengers on the brink of dying, having some of our Avengers getting absolutely dismantled by Thanos, to the snap at the end with Thor with the iconic lines that you should have gone for the head. And I feel everything about this movie just set up in Endgame so well, as they're able to, as there was too many heroes just to focus on the heroes, so having it more on Thanos was a really good way of doing this movie, and having it to where the snap happened and we only have our original Avengers left leading off into Endgame. So that's my MCU ranking. Let me know your MCU ranking down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.